catch me howling at the moon.
What's up guys, and welcome back to Park Pros. So I rode SeaWorld's Busch Gardens Tampa's new for 2020 roller coaster Iron Gwazi, and I really liked it. But is it truly one of the best roller coasters in the world like everyone is saying? We're gonna talk about that today. As a ride that to me is unlike any other RMC, I have a lot of thoughts on Iron Gwazi. But first, if you guys are new around here or have been enjoying some of the other videos, be sure to check us a sub as it really does help out the channel a ton. With that out of the way, let's talk about Iron Gwazi.
It's time to say goodbye to a piece of Busch Gardens history. The train pulled into the Gwazi station for the last time tonight.
Iron Gwazi is of course the RMC rebirth of Gwazi, Busch Gardens Tampa Bay's former GCI dueling wooden coaster. Gwazi debuted at the park in 1999 and featured two mirrored tracks with a lion and tiger themed side. Over the years, Gwazi developed a reputation as a rough ride, and despite retracking efforts and the addition of Millennium Flyer trains in 2011, the coaster experienced rapidly decreasing popularity and ridership. At the end of the 2012 season, Busch Gardens permanently closed the tiger side of the coaster, and in February of 2015, the lion side of Gwazi gave its final rides. Gwazi stood standing but not operating for years, until September of 2018 when the park unveiled that there were plans for a new attraction on the Gwazi site for the 2020 season after the addition of Tigris in 2019. And in September of 2019, Busch Gardens Tampa officially announced Iron Gwazi, the world's tallest and fastest hyper-hybrid coaster at 206 feet tall and 76 miles per hour. Iron Gwazi construction was completed in March of 2020, but the ride's opening was delayed, along with 3 other new roller coasters across the SeaWorld chain, amidst the outbreak of the pandemic. After multiple years of delays, Iron Gwazi has finally opened to pass holders and will open to the public on March 11th, 2022. Ever since it was officially announced in 2019, I've labeled Iron Gwazi as a book of flight type of roller coaster. And when the park announced the dates for this coaster's pass holder preview, that's exactly what I did. So I've had the opportunity to ride Iron Gwazi over 30 times in just about every row. So I think I have a pretty good handle on what this coaster offers. So let's start by breaking down Iron Gwazi's ride experience element by element. If you haven't been on Iron Gwazi yet and you don't want the layout spoiled, jump to this timestamp for my more general thoughts on this coaster. Final spoiler warning. Okay, here we go. You exit the station with the left-hand turn and do a slight dip before hitting the very steep lift hill. Once you crawl over the top, you plummet down the ride's 206-foot, 91-degree first drop, which gives a substantial moment of sustained ejector airtime. I probably wouldn't call this the best RMC first drop, but I certainly think it's top 5. From there, you head up into a Steel Vengeance-like Outer Banked airtime hill, but this element is really where the comparison between those two coasters ends. This element is best experienced on the right-hand side of the train, as you get some twisting ejector on your way down. After that, you do a right-handed overbank turn, and go into the ride's most highly anticipated element, what's being unofficially tabbed as the death roll. If you're sitting on the left side of the train towards the back, you get absolutely thrown through this inversion, and there were a handful of times where I grayed out on it. The death roll is great, but it is a little overhyped in my opinion. It's not the best inversion in Florida, and I don't even think it's the best element on the ride. Next up, you have this really snappy, overbanked cutback, which leads you right into the actual best element of the ride, the wave turn. This is by far the best wave turn I've experienced, and the pacing which you take it at makes it an insane sideways ejector airtime moment. Not to mention the visuals of this element going right over the top of the station are spectacular. This is just an insanely good element, one of the best on any RMC. From there, you go up and do a little pop of airtime followed by an overbank, then head into the ride's second inversion, the 0G stall. Although I wouldn't call it much of a stall, you're moving at such a high speed at this point that there's no real hang time on this inversion unless you're sitting in the front car. After that, you hit an off-axis airtime hill before going up into a right-hand turn, which leads you into what's sort of a double up. Then it's another right-hand turn, going into one last great pop of sustained ejector before throwing you into the brake run to finish off the ride. I would say that outside of the wave turn, this final airtime hill is my favorite element on the ride. You guys know by now now that I'm a sucker for sustained ejector, and this hill gives some violent airtime. I will say that after the stall, the ending of the ride is kind of weak outside of that final ejector hill. My friend Brett compared the last few elements of this ride to using autocomplete to finish a coaster on Roller Coaster Tycoon. And while I think that's a little harsh, I agree that the last few elements do kind of feel like filler, and I think that space could have been better utilized with something like a zero G roll or another sustained ejector hill. It's sort of my pet peeve when RMC tries to get cute with the rapid fire elements like this one, which I tend to find more uncomfortable than fun. But luckily, that's really the only instance of this on this coaster, which leads us into the thing that I like most about Iron Gwazi. Outside of that first Outer Bank hill and the wave turn, it really doesn't feel like any other RMC out there. Iron Gwazi's elements feel longer and more drawn out than the mostly compact layouts and elements that RMC is typically known for, but it still manages to navigate those larger elements with excellent pacing and intensity. Iron Gwazi is a brilliantly paced coaster. This ride hauls ass through every element, and that's evident by the way that you slam into the brake run. Even first thing in the morning without warming up, this coaster was still delivering a well-paced and intense ride experience. And because its pacing is so good, Iron Gwazi is like the best middle seat coaster of all time. I would say sitting towards the back is the way to go for sure, but there's not a super noticeable difference between being in the back car versus, let's say, the second or third to back. I was also able to get a couple front row rides, but I swear that my rides in rows like 4 and 6 were better. I would say that pacing is Iron Gwazi's biggest strength as a roller coaster. I think everyone's #1 concern from the day this coaster was officially announced was the ride's length. At just over 4,000 feet, Iron Gwazi is only the 7th longest RMC, which on paper does look a little concerning considering that Iron Gwazi is one of just 3 hyper hybrid coasters, and the fact that it's a replacement for 2 roller coasters which combined spanned over 7,000 feet of track. But I can assure you that this ride does not feel short at all, even with it hauling through the layout the way it does. In fact, my first thought after hitting the brake run on my first ever ride was, that was a lot longer than I expected it to be. Even though its actual ride time is less than a minute long, it packs in enough elements and action to feel like a complete roller coaster. Finally, the ride's overall aesthetic works so well. I think having that vibrant purple track, as opposed to the rustic look that RMC tends to go for a lot of the time, makes this ride fit in perfectly with the colorful palettes of the other Busch Gardens Tampa coasters. The park also did an excellent job with the logo, queue, station, and just the entire surrounding area. It also has one of the best looking coaster trains, outside of maybe Cheetah Hunt and Velocicoaster. Iron Gwazi's an excellent ride to have sitting right at the front of the park, because overall this is just an amazing looking roller coaster. So let's finally dive into the big question of the video. How does Iron Gwazi stack up with the other great roller coasters in the United States and the world? And I think a good place to start is by asking, is this the best RMC? And my answer to that is no. At least to me it's not. At the time I'm making this video, I've been on these 12 RMCs, and in my opinion, Steel Vengeance is still comfortably better than Iron Gwazi. But beyond Vengeance, Lightning Rod is the only other RMC I think has a compelling case against Iron Gwazi, and as of now, I think I lean towards preferring Gwazi. So at the very least, I see Iron Gwazi as a top 3 RMC in the United States. But I think when you stack up Iron Gwazi to some of the other great roller coasters in the country, it's sort of just missing that it factor. It's intense, but it doesn't really take you to that next level of intensity. It has good airtime, but it's not packed with it. And the inversions are great, but I think there's coasters out there that do inversions better. Don't get me wrong, Iron Gwazi has a really nice mixture of everything you could want from a roller coaster, but it doesn't do any of those things the best, if that makes sense. It could have something to do with the overall RMC fatigue we're starting to see in the coaster community, although I do find Iron Gwazi to be unique to any other RMC out there. With all that being said, is Iron Gwazi a top 5 roller coaster for me? Maybe. There's a handful of coasters that I know for sure I like more, and I'm still in the process of mulling how it stacks up to a couple other coasters beyond that. But I can say with confidence that Iron Gwazi is firmly one of the top 10 best roller coasters I've ever been on. So let us go ahead and throw Iron Gwazi into one of our tiers. And it's no surprise that Iron Gwazi is going into the elite tier, as being the most highly anticipated roller coaster since probably Steel Vengeance. For me, Iron Gwazi lived up to the very high expectations expectations I had for it. I don't see it as the best roller coaster in the world, or even the United States, but I think it's certainly in the conversation. And if this is your new number one, I completely understand why. Those are all of my thoughts on Iron Gwazi. Again, if you've enjoyed the video, please be sure to drop a like and consider subscribing because it really does help out the channel a ton. Thank you guys for checking out the video, and we'll see you all next time.